Hello, DIYers. We are back. I'm Bill Strand, and with me is James Cross.
Hey,
Hello, in the
everybody.
house. Oh, wow, James, that is a awesomely bright T-shirt you got there.
Yeah, look at the
I
color
love
I
it.
got going on today, huh?
Nice. Well,
What
today,
does this remind you of?
what does that remind me of?
Paint.
What?
Paint.
Paint. Okay,
Let's talk about paint, Bill.
because James knows exactly where I'm going with today. I have asked for a special episode, and I have been curious about paint, and I've finally said, "All right, James, we need to do an episode about paint because I want to know about paint, and I have a lot of questions. Some of them are going to be outlandish and strange, but you know how I am. I like to know about things and all sorts of things about those things. And so, James, I'm just going to ask that you be patient and you uh, take these questions as best as you can.
No problem, Bill. Remember, I'm a carpenter, but I deal with all the trades, so I do have a lot of knowledge when it comes to things like outside of the box, outside of the stuff that we normally do. So I can probably answer most of your questions.
All right, then we're going to try it. We're going to try it. So, we're going to start off with paint. What is paint made of and why does it stick?
Okay, so paint is basically resins and polymers and plastics that are mixed together with pigments to create colors. As far as it sticking, um, I don't really have an answer for that. I mean, it's because of the resins that are in the mix that will help it bond to whatever you put it on.
They've got sticky resins,
The yeah, yeah, right.
the same
Well,
stuff they use in
resin's
bubble
kind of
gum.
sticky.
You can tell me anything and I'll believe it.
Yeah, it's basically the pigments and the resins and the solvents that they use in the products that make it adhere to stuff.
Okay. Well, when I go to and look for things to color my chameleon cages with,
Hmm.
there's paint, there's stain, and there's sealers. What is the difference between those?
So paint obviously is literally a barrier between the outside and the inside of what you're putting it on top of. A stain will be transparent and is generally used as a solvent base. And the thing about stains is over time it's gonna wear off.
Okay.
Um, and what was the last one you asked me?
Sealer.
Sealers. Okay, so what sealers do is they actually penetrate whatever you're doing, and sealers can actually be like a primer also. And what it'll do is it'll actually penetrate into the product that you have. Whereas paints have a tendency to stay on the surface. Stains will penetrate a little bit, but sealers go really deep.
Okay.
So if you're going
So,
into wood or stone, it'll penetrate deep into those products.
how well does paint act as a sealer?
It actually works pretty darn good.
Okay.
Um, to make your paint be a good sealer, though, you're first going to want to put a good primer on it. And the primer itself is going to be what really does the penetrating. And then that allows the paint to sit on the surface of that and bond to the primer, where the primer has gone deep into the product. And it gives you a much smoother, nicer, cleaner surface.
So I think you've answered my next question, which is what is a primer and why do we
Well,
use it?
man, I'm ahead of my game.
You're just ahead.
Huh?
You're just good. You're just that good.
So primers are basically a sealer and a bonder, which allows the paint to adhere much better to whatever products you're going to put them on, especially wood.
Okay.
But it also works very well with concrete and with stone and with non-pervious products also.
Okay. Now I can get primer, I can get paint, and I can get a mixture of paint and primer. Why don't we just have all of the paint be a mixture of paint and primer?
It's really got to do with the type of paint and product that you're doing it with. The paint and primer is really good after our first base coat. Um, and I think the principle of it came because people got tired of paying for two products. Um, and generally, the paint and primer process is really geared towards painting your house, interior walls. You're not gonna really see that much on an exterior situation. You'll see it a lot more on interior, and it's basically putting it over something that's already got a base coat on it. So what you're trying to do is stain block. Um, it's not. It's much better to use a really good primer the first time you paint anything, whether it be wood, drywall, concrete. You really want to use a good base coat primer and spend the money on it because it'll give you years of protection. And then anything you put on top of that can be a paint and primer, uh,
Okay.
uh, just a regular paint. The reason that we use paint and primers now after the fact is because let's say the kids got some stuff on the wall and you cleaned it off, but you go to paint and it won't paint because the product never really came all the way off. The primer will do a good job of covering all of that stuff up too.
Okay. Okay. And we have interior paint and exterior paint. What makes it interior or exterior?
That's a really good one. So let's start with interior paint. So interior paints, um, when you put them inside of your house, you got to they're going to take some wear and tear. um, Things like moving your furniture in and out of the house, the kids putting stuff on the walls, even rubbing up against the walls as you go through a certain. So, what an interior paint is a little bit more uh, strong. It's a stronger bonding. It uses a lot more epoxy type resins in the paint to make it so that you can clean it, and it doesn't damage as easily as as just a regular paint would do. So it's definitely designed geared more towards being a durable product.
Oh, I would have thought that the exterior paint would be the one that would be extra enhanced.
So ironically, it's really not. It's kind of the opposite. Now, on your exterior paints, they're geared more to UVB lighting, sun stoking. They hold their color longer. They're a softer resin, so they're more pliable, so they can kind of expand and contract when it comes to temperature, sunlight. And there's not as much physical touching and abuse to it as there is on an interior application. So it's geared more towards being weather resistant, sunlight resistant, and being a little bit more pliable. It actually has a lot softer resins in it. So it's actually not as strong when it comes to
Wow.
abrasions and things of that sort.
So when we're doing our cages, since we have well, our cages, even if the cages are inside, they have a lot of uh, we're going to have a lot of moisture and a lot of water. And so, should we do exterior on our cages or interior on our cages, no matter where they are?
Yeah, I gear myself towards using the exterior paint on on everything. I even use it on the interior.
Oh,
But and it's because it is a flexible paint, but it's going to allow you to have a lot more expansion and contraction with whatever we're doing. It's
okay,
it's and it's also going to hold up to our lights and our heat and our extremes that we're doing with our cages. So yes,
okay.
exterior is really the only way we want to go with our cages.
Okay, then we have the paint finish. We've got satin, matte, and a bunch of glosses, heavy gloss, semi gloss, and all that kind of stuff. Is that purely aesthetic or are there functional differences?
There is functional differences. When you use a flat paint, it's going to have a tendency to grab stuff. It'll get dirtier easier. It doesn't resist water as much. It's actually kind of put yourself in a situation where you would think of a chalkboard. With a flat paint, you could actually write with chalk on it, whereas a shiny paint um, is going to resist things. So it's gonna resist tape. It's gonna resist pens, marks, bug poop, um, feeders crawling up it. Um, that's what the shiny stuff's gonna do for you. Whereas the flat stuff will actually attract those types of things.
Okay.
Satin is the new semi gloss. So what satin is everybody have was doing a lot of this high gloss enamel, and then we came down to this semi gloss, which was kind of a cut in the sheen, but it was still pretty shiny. um, and so when you wanted to use something on an exterior situation where you live like in the country as opposed to the city, where your house is going to get more dirt up against it, so on and so forth. What we used to do back in the day is we would paint them either semi gloss or gloss enamel to keep the dirt off the outside of your house. In the city, it's not as much of a as a big a deal. So that's where you would see the duller colors. Um, they came up with the satin, which gives you the same effect of completely not being a bonding product where dirt or anything will stick to it, but it's more of a flat look. So satin
Okay.
is the new semi gloss.
So, which one do you pick for your cages?
It really depends on the drama I'm trying to draw out of it. If I want to attract attention to the color, I would go with this. I always use it enamel. I go high gloss because that way stuff doesn't stick to it. I have done a few exteriors of the cage with the satin because I want it to disappear. My thing with cages is I want the cage to be the focal point. So if you know me, I don't do white, I don't do purple, I don't have any kind of real design on the outside of the cages. I want the inside of the cage to be the focal point. So most of the time I do my cages super dark on the outside and super light on the inside.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Kind of like that one up there.
The what?
That one you have up there.
Right up here?
Yeah. See how it's dark? All I can see
Yeah.
is
Oh yeah. Yeah.
that's what I like. I like that being physically attracted to what's in the cage and the outside of the cage just kind of disappears.
Yeah, we'll go there. Yeah.
Yeah. Your focal point is the plants and the animal and
Yep.
it's not the cage itself, which some people like that too. I like it to kind of blend in with my furniture, um, as opposed to being just a screen cage with a
Yeah.
stick.
So, okay, water-based versus oil-based. What is up with that?
Okay, so back in the day, the water-based paints were not as good. They didn't use higher quality resins. Um, it had a tendency to flake and peel because we didn't have primers that were really strong. And the focus was really on the oil based paints. They're a solvent based paint. They bond, they penetrate, they hold up. Um, they hold up to a storm. They're oil base was really popular with exterior trim, doors, things of that back 10, 15 years ago. Since then, because of all the EPA regulations and the environmentalists and worrying about runoff and lead in the paint, lead was also used in oil-based paints too back in the day, which made it. The paint was indestructible. It was really awesome, but it was very toxic. So what we've done is we've kind of taken away that danger factor, um, and we've kind of steered away. I still see some oil-based painting done, but it's usually like in hotels and it's an interior application where it's in an industrial type situation, in buildings that you're, warehouses, and that's where I usually tend to see a lot more oil based paints.
Okay.
In homes, we don't see it hardly at all anymore, and 90% of what we're using is water based. And the water based paints that they're coming out with now are using really strong epoxies, resins, and the pigments themselves are even stronger. So, I would gear myself towards water based paints.
Okay.
They've really
Well,
come a long way.
makes it a lot easier for us. So, when should we use spray paint?
Hmm. So, believe it or not, most spray paint is an oil based paint.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So, and the reason being is that it sprays really well. Um, it works really good with propellants, and it's super strong. So most of the paints that you're going to get out of a spray can nowadays are going to be oil based, and you'll notice that because you just can't wash it off.
Mm,
You're going to have to get out the lacquer thinner to remove that from you, or the paint thinner. So I
all
use
right.
spray paint for anything like metal, um, uh, and stuff that I want to um, do art with.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, we saw that last episode.
I got a whole wall of spray paint over
Oh
there.
boy, look at that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I walk into Home Depot right now. Let's talk about for a cage. And this is not hypothetical. I'm getting ready to do an outdoor cage. And so I'm looking at what kind of paint should I get. So we're talking about getting first would you recommend doing a primer first?
Most definitely, especially in an exterior situation.
And is there any choices to be made? Or do you just go and pick up primer, or do you have to actually? Are there actually choices?
There are choices. There's inexpensive ones. There's ones that you use for drywall. There's a PVA primer. There's metal primers. There's uh, epoxy primers. Um, for me, the and you're going to find this with anything when it comes to these types of products. You just look at the price tag, and it's going to tell you what's better.
Okay,
Unfortunately, if you want a really good primer, and I really recommend that, use a cheap paint, use an expensive primer, because the primer is going to be your base coat forever. So my first thing I'm going to do is go in and find the really, and if I can find it, I might even use an oil based primer before I put my paint on, because it's just going to bond and last for a long time.
okay. And you prefer a the what was it the semi gloss?
For inside of cages, I'll go with semi gloss, yeah, or
But
high gloss enamel, because nothing sticks to it.
okay, all right. And so okay,
It does have a sheen and it will reflect. That's the only thing that's, if you don't want that reflection, you kind of want the walls to not be shiny, then you're going to go with the semi gloss or a satin.
so you
Satin
do
will
a
give you the
semi
same
gloss or
result.
satin exterior. I think for mine I would do the satin because I don't need it. I don't want it shining, but
Yeah.
if it's outdoor, um, I do need the so I do have to have it as an exterior
Mm-hmm.
because of the UVB.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, and of course I've done this for decades and decades, but I never knew what I was buying. So, so all right, now here's something that I've never understood, always confused me, and that's brushes. You walk in there. There's so many different kind of brushes there. There's what they call them, chip brushes, and then there's horsehair brushes and like luxury brushes. Uh, we have cheap brushes. We have expensive brushes. What is the difference in actual to me?
I just happen to have a couple.
Yeah.
So, foam brushes. I don't
Oh
know
yeah, and foam brushes too.
I don't know who came up with these. I think they're silly. They're great for doing art projects and faux finishes, and they leave bubbly holes. they work great for getting into tiny nooks and crannies. So these would be really good to use on your spray foam projects and things of that sort, because they can fit into any kind of area and they don't leave a brush mark. And
Yeah.
that's the whole principle behind a foam brush. It's not to leave to be able to get into a nook and cranny without leaving a brush mark. Brush marks are usually the biggest issue with home painting and things like that. But with art, what we're doing, it actually adds a kind of a neat effect. So when I'm doing my Flex Seal, I use these guys. Okay, these are 99 cents and you can throw them away when you're done. This
Hmm.
is great for spreading material. You do your, what's the other stuff that they use? Dry lock. Um, these are the perfect brushes for that. These are also good brushes for cleaning out your car, the vents in your, in the, anyway, you know where I'm going with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Now let's get to the real brushes. Okay, so here's a horsehair brush. This brush, you can see it's very fine. And the reason that this brush is needed is for oil-based paints. Um, when you try to paint an oil-based paint with a premium or non-premium or crappy brush, not only are you going to get big, huge ridges, you're never going to get it out of there. And what it's going to look like is somebody pinstriped your paint job.
Hmm.
Okay, and now we'll get to the brush that's my favorite that I use for everything. And there were several different brands, but Worcester has come over, has become one of my favorites. This is my favorite size brush. You can get a big fat brush for covering a lot of area. Um, I tend to only use brushes for painting trim and cutting in corners. Um, and these are made out of polyester. So they're uh, a plastic based brush. But what I really love about it is the angle cut. And what that angle cut does, and I don't know if I can simulate it, but it allows me to draw an edge and I can cut a corner so straight that I don't need tape.
Oh.
Um, this will load up plenty of material in the back and literally, like an old fashioned pen, will push it out towards the end of the tip of the brush.
Oh.
These are amazing brushes. These will take the non painter and turn them into a painter. I really love these brushes.
All right.
So
That's what I
remember,
need. What is that?
it's a polyester 2 inch um,
These are two.
angle cut brush. I think
Is it?
that's what they
Are
call it.
those common? I don't. I'm sure I've seen them. I just didn't know
They
what I was
are
looking
very
at.
common. You'll see groups of them. Like even my this guy's a straight. You'll see a straight cut, okay, and those are great for going up and down picket fences.
Uh-huh.
But if you're cutting corners and you want to get into a corner, what's neat about these is it kind of reminds me of the old pens that you dip in the ink,
Mm-hmm.
and it holds a lot of paint in the back, and when you push that brush down, it literally will give you a tip where the paint will come out of the body of the brush and just out on the tip. And boy, these are you can really cut a sharp edge with this.
Okay.
And of course, that's how I do all of my edges, nooks and crannies. I will use that, and then we just go to our basic um, 1/4 inch or 3/8 snap roller. When I'm doing my projects, most of what we do is small, so I like these little weenie rollers.
Hmm.
And what I like about them is they come in a contractor's pack, and when I'm done with them, toss them away. Something
So if
about painting and not cleaning brushes um, goes really well with James.
okay. Well, so if I am going to be doing a cage that has a lot of let's see, 2x4, so that's 3.5 inch wide lumber. Am
Uh
I just
huh.
looking for a 3.5 inch wide brush?
Yep. Or you could just use the roller. Those weenie rollers you will literally you can paint anything with them.
Okay.
The only thing they don't do is get into a corner really tight. You can get them in there, but you have to load them up, and then you end up with a big drip. So I would recommend this 2 inch brush. It's all I buy now, and then of course I use the contractor's pack of weenie rollers. You get what is it? I think there's 12 of them in this pack, and you can throw them away when you're done. I'm not real big on cleaning up afterwards.
Well, I mean, do you even throw away the polyester ones?
No, these guys I clean because
Okay.
they're 15 or $20. So I try to make them
Oh,
last as long.
wow.
Yeah,
That's
I
probably
like
why I never paid attention to them.
yeah, these guys are 79 cents.
Yes, that's been Bill's price range.
But you can't do much with this, Bill. These are really
Yeah, that's true.
crappy.
Yes, they are. But I didn't know the horrible state I was in. So, all right. So let's talk about how do you properly clean a paintbrush?
Super easy. What I do with it is I turn on the warm water in my sink. First, I take it outside and I try to get as much of the paint product off of it, um, because I don't want to be running anything down the sink. I'm very conscious of trying to keep uh, pollutants out of our water system, and I think it's wise that everybody tries to be that way. You're not going to be able to keep all of it out, but I do my best to get the majority of it out. And then when I go inside, what I do is I will literally stick it underneath the faucet in the warm water, and I like to hold the brush up like that, and then I let that water run all the way because the brush goes deep into this head. It's going to be the brush materials here, and the paint will get all the way down into here. So what I try to do is get the water to go as deep into that brush as I can, and I just kind of massage the brush itself. The trick at the end, and I don't know if I can do it on camera, but then when I get done with it, let's see, put my boot up here. I'll take that brush and I will hit it on my boot. And what that does is that draws all that paint out. And then I'll go back in and do it again. And I'll do that a couple of times till I have my waters almost clear. I can make these brushes last 6 or 7 paint jobs easy.
Okay. So, all right. Well, let's do a review of what we've gone over.
Wait, you forgot tape.
Tape.
Well, yeah, some people aren't good. They want to tape things off, or you want to mask it off. You want two
Well,
different colors. You want some
that's probably
stripes.
something I ought to know about then.
So I only use, well, maybe 3. I have 3 different kinds of tapes I use. The main one I use is Scott's Blue. This is a pretty darn good tape for painting. This will, uh, you can bend it around corners. You can stick it up into, it gives a straight line every time you lay it down, and it comes off really smooth. It's a little bit pricey. I think these are going for about $7 a roll now. But this is almost 90% of my taping and masking off. I use this blue tape.
Well, how is that different than the green stuff or the
I'm getting there.
beige? Oh, okay. All
Man,
right.
you're in a hurry. Okay, what's this stuff?
What? Is that
Oh,
duct tape? Red duct tape?
it's not duct tape.
What is that?
Now, this is a stretchy tape, and
Stretchy
you can
tape.
see it's almost plastic.
Oh, I
Okay.
do not know what that is.
Okay, so what this is called is plasterer's tape. Why? I have no idea, but most plasterers use this.
Uh-huh.
This is a great product because it leaves no residue. Okay.
Okay.
It's stronger than the blue tape. It'll hold up once it's taped on. You can get it wet with things like your paint or your, um, uh, let's say your cleaning products when you're done.
Okay.
Um, let's say you're going to, what's nice about this is once you have it on, you don't have to worry about it getting wet. Whereas the blue tape, the minute the outside of this gets wet, it's going to fail. This is great for a few minutes. This is great for heavier. Let's say you're going to be doing you're going to have a lot of
Okay.
paint on there and it's going to get really wet. So and they're both 3M products. But anyway, it's kind of plastically and it tears. So it's not duct tape. Duct tape is duct tape, and we know what duct tape's
Yeah.
for. Everything else. And then there's the best type of all, but it's super expensive. And you were talking about the green stuff.
Yes.
Okay.
The
And
frog
this
tape?
stuff will not bleed. So let's say I want to put a stripe on my cage. This is the stuff you're going to want to use. The blue tape, no matter how hard you press it down, you're going to get these little breaks along that edge. It's not going to be a sharp line. This stuff right here is called frog tape, and it's just like frog toes. No, I'm kidding. Um, this will block anything from getting through. The edges, once you put it down, it is so tight that nothing can penetrate it. This is
Okay.
also really good with the water with the moisture content. It's not as plasticky, but it this is really awesome tape. But this stuff's quite pricey. Okay,
Okay.
there's our tape.
Wonderful. All right. So let's recap what we've done here when we're talking about paint and brushes. So with the context that we want to, I'm going to be building an exterior cage, and so I walk into Home Depot. What am I walking out with?
We're doing an exterior cage, so we're
Exterior
going
cage.
to grab some primer. It's and then we're going to pick our paint color. You
Grab some
can use
primer, as expensive as I can afford.
You definitely want to go with the best primer you can find, and an oil-based primer would be awesome.
Okay.
Then you're going to pick your paint color. You're going to want a drop cloth. Keep the messes off the ground because your wife's going to spank your butt if you get more paint on the concrete driveway.
Uh-huh.
Mm. I know this one, trust me. Uh, then you're going to want to make sure that you get some tape. You're going to want to make sure that if you're painting if you're using a oil-based paint or anything that has any VOC, which is, remember the name of it. I had to write it down. Um, I didn't write it down. Volatile. I can't remember the name. You're gonna have to cut that part. Hold on.
What, volatile organic compounds?
That's
VOCs?
it. Volatile. So
Organic?
if you have high VOC, which is volatile organic compounds, you're going to want to work in a very aerated area because uh, the chemicals are going to get you lightheaded. It could make you sick. You could even pass out. Most water-based paints you can do indoors. So you want to make sure that when you're doing your project that you don't have a lot of wind, you don't have a lot of dust, because that'll affect your final outcome.
Okay. I have my primer.
Then you're, yep.
I have my paint. We're going to go with oil-based primer, water-based paint, and choice between the finish, whatever I feel like, depending upon interior expert, whatever. Okay. And well, maybe we got to talk about colors.
Uh huh.
In your experience, what colors work well for cages?
So I think you can probably get away with pretty much any color. What I like I said before, is I like a lighter interior and a darker exterior because I want to
Hmm.
draw your focal point to the cage. So most of my cages will stay dark, blacks, dark browns. In the interiors of my cages, I'm gonna go with white, or try to stay very light, unless I'm trying to make it disappear. But most of the time, I'm doing my little foam things in the background, so I'm trying to give it some texture. So I might go dark, but then I build it up with a bunch of color. Um, yeah, I would stay with darker colors. Just, the nice thing about darker colors too is if your project doesn't turn out quite as nice as you expected, let's say you got a couple of blems here and there, maybe an edge didn't get square as you wanted it to, or darker colors will make all of that disappear.
All right. Sounds like a good thing to keep in my back pocket.
Yeah.
So, all right, James. that gives me a baseline of understanding me and everybody else who was listening, who knew all this already, right, guys? You
Yeah.
all knew this, and so what I want to do is next episode, I want to go into techniques, and so we've just done our shopping trip. This episode takes care of our shopping trip, and so next episode, I want to go into how we're going to use all of this incredible stuff. You up for that?
I'm up for it.
All right, then. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We are going to go, and what are we going to do, James?
We're going to just build it.
Yeah! All right, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Take care, everyone. See you next time.